Okay, I will speak in Spanish first and then
Okay.
switch to
Okay.
English.
Okay.
Okay, muy buenos días a todos y a todas. Bienvenidos al 13º Congreso Nacional de la Sociedad Mexicana de Toxicología. Vamos a dar inicio con nuestra conferencia magistral. Okay, so welcome to everybody to our 13th Congress of the Mexican Society of Toxicology. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alexandra Buja. Dr. Alexandra Buja will give the talk entitled Endocrine Disruptors and Their Long-Term Health Effect, Current Research and Exposure Reduction Strategies. So now I will read a short bio of Dr. Alexandra Buja. Alexandra Buja is an international recognized expert in toxicology, focusing on endocrine disruptor and their impact on human health. She holds a PhD from the University of Belgrade, Faculty of Pharmacy, where she currently serves as an associate professor and vice dean for science and international relations. Alexandra Buja is currently a visiting professor in the School of Medicine, University of Sassari, Italy, and serves as a member of Group 4 at the Department of Pharmacology and Physiology, Oklahoma State University, USA. Additionally, from 2023, she has been the president of the PhD Thesis Defense Committee at the Doctoral School in Clinical and Experimental Medicine, University of Moderna and Reggio Emilia, Italy. Furthermore, she serves as an academic chair for global health inside European Circle University Alliance. With over 90 peer-reviewed publications and Hersh index of 33, her research has had a significant influence evidenced by more than 3,500 citations. She has led a collaboration on numerous international projects, including studies funded by the National Institute of Environmental Health Science, Breast Cancer UK, and the Science Fund of Republic of Serbia. Her current research explores the impact of environmental chemicals on neurodevelopment and endocrine health, particularly focusing on chemical mixture and risk assessment. So I would like to give now the microphone to Dr. Alexandra Buja, and then you can start. Very welcome to our national conference.
Thank you so much. Good day to everybody. I'm not sure about the time in Mexico. And it's my great pleasure to give a lecture today. Thank you for the invitation. And I wish that next time I will be able to join you in person. I've never been to Mexico, and I think it would be very nice to visit your country. So today I'm going to speak about my favorite topic, and this is the topic on endocrine disrupting chemicals. I will try to give a short overview of the things that we know so far about them. and also how can we reduce the exposure while we are waiting for better and let's say one day perfect regulation when it comes to these type of chemicals. So I usually love to start my presentation with the question, what determines health? And I usually get the answer that the genome is the one that determines health, and that depending on our genome, we will either get sick during our life or won't and live very long. But after more than 2,000 of studies that were specifically connected to the relation of genome to health, we were able to identify and to found that only 16% of all diseases are basically genome dependent, and this is a rather small influence that entire genome has on our disease risk and basically on our health. So there is a question then, what's happening with this remaining 70 to 90% of disease risk? What determines this risk? And the answer is various environmental factors. So therefore, we have this term exposome, which I'm sure you are already aware of. And exposome represents all exposure to which an individual is subjected from the moment of conception until our death. And this includes various environmental agents, but also, of course, socioeconomic conditions, our lifestyle, diet, physical activities, etc. And this is a potential measure of the effects of life course exposure on our health. So this is the guy who invented, let's say, or coined the term exposome. And it all started in 2005 when he wanted to basically publish this paper in which he stated that exposome as a term can complement genome, and that genome and exposome together are responsible for our health. But this wasn't something very popular at the time, and he got many desk rejections for the paper, and at the very end he basically published this as an editorial in a journal in which he was an editor. So it didn't really started as planned, but somewhere around 2010 somebody from the FDA pick up this paper and sort of realize that it is very important. And then, as you can see, there is a huge amount of citations, and the exposome is now the term that we are using, and that we can generally say that genetics loads the gun, but the environment is the one that pulls the trigger. And our health is basically the product of both genome and exposome, and of course their interactions. So this is in a way thinking outside of the box, and exposome are shifting us from the concept of just investigating single chemicals and following the single hazard paradigm, which has explained, of course, some public health problems, but also has perhaps misdirected us by focusing on a few chemicals rather than on the entire chemicals that are surrounding us and that we are exposed to. So some of the basic premises of this type of thinking is that we are all, through our life, exposed to very low doses of various groups of chemicals, various substances. We are exposed to so-called toxic cocktails of chemicals. Also, it is very important to recognize the role of epigenetics, which are basically the way that genome and exposome are interacting between each other, and also to improve public health protection. by using the exposome itself, because as you know, we cannot change our genome. That is something that we are given by the moment of conception, and we cannot influence it in any kind of way. But when it comes to exposome, we can do a lot. So there is a lot of potential for prevention if we are following this type of thinking and this paradigm. So very important part of exposome are chemicals and various environmental agents to which are we exposed to. And when we are talking about the exposure of chemicals, we are usually having in mind this type of picture. So it's usually some sort of a professional exposure, and we are usually imagining somebody that is wearing safety gloves and all safety protection, as it should, of course, if there is professional exposure. But in reality, exposure to chemicals also look like this. So we have a child that is playing with some toys, which are, of course, full of chemicals, of different chemicals, and this child is basically exposed to these chemicals via their skin or orally if they are in their oral phase, and of course putting toys in their mouth, which is something that children in this age usually do. So among all these chemicals that we are exposed to, endocrine disrupting chemicals really deserve some sort of a special treatment, and I will try to explain why and try to justify this selection. So this is basically the definition which was given by World Health Organization, and we are still using this definition. So by this definition, we say that the endocrine disruptor is an exogenous substance or a mixture that alters the function of our endocrine system, and by doing so, it causes adverse health effect in an organism or its progeny or subpopulation. So the first time that this term was coined was in this book, Our Stolen Future, written by Theo Colborn and other authors. And this is the first time that this term was mentioned. This was sort of a scientific detective story in which the authors asked us, are we threatening our fertility, intelligence, and even our survival by being exposed to this type of chemicals? And since the preface was given by the vice president of the USA, Al Gore, at the time, the book was very famous and popular. And I also wanted to show you these two books, which are also very important in the field. So Sicker, Fatter, Poorer, a book by Leo Trasande, who is one of the biggest scientists in the field, and also Countdown by Shanna Swan, which is basically talking about the a big decrease in sperm counts, and we will talk a little bit about reproductive health later. So how do endocrine disruptors act when they enter our organism? They can act in several different ways, but the most important way is that they are chemically very similar to our hormones. And by being chemically similar, structurally basically similar to our hormones, they can mimic our hormones. So they can bind to receptors and then activate all the subsequent pathways and produce effects like the natural hormone itself. The other way is to also connect to the receptor, but instead of mimicking the effects of hormone, they can block the receptors and then, of course, prevent the natural hormones from doing their job in the organism. They can also affect the metabolism and synthesis of our hormones. They can modify excretion and metabolism. They can change the sensitivity of receptors, and also they can directly affect our glands. So these are some of the most important mechanisms. there are many endocrine disrupting chemicals. And if you look at the different sources, you will see the different numbers. This number, which I gave here, is more than 1,400, which is given by the Endocrine Society. If you look at the, for example, website of the European Union, you will find around 115 chemicals. But regardless of the number, these are some of the most important groups among endocrine disrupting chemicals. So we have flame retardants, we have heavy metals, we have PFAS chemicals, phthalates, bisphenols, pesticides, phytoestrogens, etc. So these are some of the most important endocrine disrupting chemicals that we are exposed to in our everyday life. So bisphenol A, I'm sure all of you are aware of the bisphenol A and bisphenols in general as parts of plastics and phthalates, as well as plasticizers. So to these two types of endocrine disrupting chemicals, we are mainly exposed via plastic or via canned food. Also, we have parabens, which are used mainly in cosmetic products. Then perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS substances, which are very present in Teflon, for example, in everything that is waterproof and also that repels oil. Then we have pesticides and toxic metals. Some of them are also categorized as endocrine disrupting chemicals. For example, cadmium is very often called metal estrogen, which sort of speaks for itself. Also, I mentioned that endocrine disrupting chemicals does not necessarily need to be synthetic. They just need to be synthesized outside our organism, but they can also be of natural origin. So we have some essential oils that can be that have endocrine activity. Also soy, so some phytoestrogens that we are of course all aware of. But they can produce in our organism endocrine disrupting activities. So all natural things does not necessarily need to be safe, are not necessarily safe. So we need to think about these types of endocrine disrupting chemicals as well. But of course, there are some differences between natural and synthetic endocrine disrupting chemicals. So first of all, of course, source, then potency. Synthetic endocrine disrupting chemicals are generally stronger. They're more potent than the natural ones, and they're more persistent in the environment, and that, of course, makes them more dangerous. Exposure to natural endocrine disrupting chemicals usually comes from diet, while synthetic endocrine disrupting chemicals can, of course, come from diet, but can also come through variety of consumer product and also through various industrial processes. And at the end, it is also worth saying that synthetic endocrine disrupting chemicals are more likely to be subjected to regulatory scrutiny and control, given their widespread use and potential for significant health impact. And while natural endocrine disrupting chemicals are sort of under the radar when it comes to regulation and control. So I, at the very beginning, told you that I'm going to convince you that endocrine disrupting chemicals are really special and that we need to think about them in a different way from other chemicals. And why so? So first of all, they are everywhere. As I have mentioned, we can be exposed to them via our food, via water, via consumer products that we are using on a daily basis, various cosmetic products, toys, etc. And the other thing is that they have this dose response behavior, which is very characteristic for them. So in toxicology, we are usually expecting to see this type of dose response. So this monotonic curve. And when we are trying to figure out the toxicity of a substance, we are usually, while doing the animal studies, we are giving different doses to different groups of animals. And then we are trying to find the group that has received the highest dose but did not have any adverse effects. And then we establish this dose as a non-observable adverse effect level, null. And then we use this dose to derive some tolerable daily intake or acceptable daily intake for humans, of course, by using various safety factors. So we automatically assume that everything that is below this dose that we have established in our experiment is safe. But when it comes to endocrine disrupting chemicals, the problem is that the dose response curve is not always, and in majority cases, is not monotonic. It's non-monotonic. So we can expect this type of response. And when we are doing the animal study and we are, for example, somewhere here, and we find no effects, and if we suggest that everything below this dose is safe, then we are going to make a big mistake, as you can see. So it is very hard to think about the endocrine disrupting chemicals and threshold concept. And it is very hard to find the dose that we can regard as a safe dose for a human population. Also, there is one more thing with endocrine disrupting chemicals, and that's the fact that many studies have shown that they can have delayed effects. So that means that if we are exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals, for example, during the fetal period and later on as babies, they can manifest their negative health effects later in our adult life. And also they can, studies have shown that they can have transgenerational effects, which basically means that the exposure of a grandmother can in a way determine the health of their granddaughter, grandson, which is of course a very big responsibility for a pregnant woman. And of course, there are mixtures. We are exposed to mixtures. We are never exposed to single chemicals. And some of these endocrine disrupting chemicals, of course, can interact and maybe produce some synergistic effects at the levels of various receptors. So we can for sure say that exposure to this type of chemicals is a growing concern. And if we look at it, trying to figure out the costs, it's always good to have these numbers when you are going to the regulators, because there are very strong evidence that exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals contribute to disease and dysfunction with annual cost, which is more than 2% of the GDP in USA and more than 1% in Europe. The difference is because Europe has better regulation when it comes to endocrine disrupting chemicals. Health costs, which are linked to exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, have been estimated to be over 163 billions of euros in Europe alone. And this is the underestimation because it is very hard to find the causal connection between the exposure, for example, in early ages and health effects that can happen decades later. So which are the organs and health organ system which are mainly affected by endocrine disrupting chemicals, and what are the most important health outcomes? So first of all, I will say that it is very important to be aware of the moment of the exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals. So there are these windows of great sensitivity, and these are the periods of very early childhood and fetal period. So I'm sure that you are all aware of the mini puberty as a term. So this is sort of a temporary change in sex hormones, which happens in first few months of baby's life. And this is caused by reactivation of HPG axis after birth. This is totally normal and physiological, and it leads to increased levels of LH and FSH and sex steroids like testosterone in boys and estradiol in girls. And this is very important. This mini puberty thing is very important for normal development and normal growth of reproductive organs, body composition, and even neural maturation. So it is very important not to have endocrine disrupting chemicals in your organism in this period. So these are these windows of extra sensitivity. So endocrine disrupting chemicals and exposure to these to them have been shown to affect fetal and childhood growth, first of all. So it can produce low birth weight, it can produce preterm birth, it can produce some developmental delays, and it can produce increased adiposity. So the other problem is neurological development. So exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals have been connected to impaired cognitive function, to lower IQ in children, to behavior disorders as ADHD and autism. And we are witnessing the increase of these diseases in our population. Also reproductive health, because as I have mentioned, some of these processes are happening very early in our life. So exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals can produce reduced fertility, can produce decrease in sperm count, also altered puberty timing, and many others problems with reproductive health that later on can lead to first of all, reduce fertility, which we are going to talk about a little bit more later. And also metabolic outcomes, so obesity, diabetes risk is also increased when we are exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals, and also cardiovascular risks because of arteriosclerosis. And also I listed here some of the most important endocrine disrupting chemicals that we already mentioned, like bisphenols, phthalates, PFAS, flame retardants, and also micro and nanoplastics, because in a way they can transport these endocrine disrupting chemicals inside themselves. And these are some of the most important sources of endocrine disrupting chemicals. So plastics, of course, it's everywhere. Just a little bit more about developmental neurotoxicity, which has been connected to endocrine disrupting chemicals. This is a very important study by Caporale et al., which was published in 2022. And they used this SELMA cohort, which was enrolled in Sweden in the period from 2007 until 2010. And they were basically following mother and child pairs and measured the concentration of PFAS, phthalates, BPA, and triclosan, which is also a suspected endocrine disrupting chemical, in serum or urine from mothers in the 10th week of pregnancy. So then they used these concentration that they got, and they sort of created real-life endocrine disrupting chemicals mixtures. And they treated various experimental models with these mixtures, so organoids, zebrafish, etc. And they estimated that around, and also one more thing that is very important, they noticed that 10% of the children that were enrolled in the cohort had language delays, which is defined as the use of fewer than 50 words at the age of 30 months old, so it's about 2.5 years. And then they estimated that around 44% of the children in the cohort had been prenatally exposed to endocrine disrupting chemical mixture concentration that could induce biological effects based on these tests that they did in multiple experimental models. And they concluded that these could be this language impairment as well, so that the endocrine disrupting chemicals could be responsible for this quite high percentage of children that had language delays. So this is about developmental toxicity, but we also mentioned reproductive toxicity, and this is also a very important problem, almost alarming. So I mentioned earlier Shanna Swan. She is one of the greatest experimental epidemiologists, in the world, and she did this big study in 2017 where she basically tried to compare the sperm count in 100 in previous century and in 2070. And she really found the big drop, almost 50%. But the main problem with the paper was that she didn't had the information from these parts of the world. And then in 2022, she published a paper that basically collected the information from the entire world, and the situation was the same. So the drop was about basically between 1 and 2% per year. And the conclusion of the paper was that if this trend is to continue, we are going to have a serious problem. So by 2040, more than 80% of couples will not be able to conceive without the help of without assisted ways like in vitro fertilization, etc. So how can we be exposed to these endocrine disrupting chemicals? We already mentioned that they are all around us, so we can be exposed by inhalation, by ingestion of certain food or water. We can be dermally exposed to them. They're usually lipophilic, so they can easily enter through skin, and also unfortunately through breast milk and through placenta. Who are they affecting? So literally everybody, but as I have tried to explain, there are some periods when we are particularly sensitive to it, and these are the periods of fetal development and early childhood. Also mention some transgenerational effects. So there are publications, peer-reviewed publications that had shown that endocrine disrupting chemicals are not only affecting the individuals that are exposed to them directly, but also the offsprings and also the multiple future generations. So in a way, we are getting the exposure from our parents and our grand and grandparents. And of course, the question is, what is happening with the regulations? So having in mind all this, how can these chemicals be around us? So in Europe, we have some steps toward reducing the presence of endocrine disrupting chemicals in our daily life. There are many strategies, and in 2020, the chemical strategy for sustainability launched, and they are now part of the European Green Deal initiative. This is all very promising, but the problem is that when the chemical is on the market, then it needs a certain amount of years to pass by until we prove that the chemical is dangerous, and then it can be regulated or it can be banned, etc. One more thing, which is very important when it comes to endocrine disrupting chemicals, we mentioned that the threshold concept that we usually use for chemicals when we sort of define the safety dose here sometimes cannot be used, and there are some initiatives that we should treat endocrine disrupting chemicals as carcinogenic chemicals. So there are no safe doses generally for them. These are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to regulatory framework for endocrine disrupting chemicals. So there are inconsistent definitions. We don't have a global consensus of what it needs to be proven for a chemical to be endocrine disrupting chemical. Therefore, there are some differences depending on the source that you are using when talking about the number of endocrine disrupting chemicals. Of course, there are limited data, so we need more research. There are limited testing for these low doses, which can be very important, as you have seen, and also limited data for cocktail effects of endocrine disrupting chemicals. Slow policy updates, I already explained this, so it's very, regulation often lag behind emerging research findings, so they need to wait to see whether this research is really a good one and reproducible. Sometime needs to pass. And of course, we have industry resistance. They push back against stricter controls due to, of course, economic implications. So if we ban a certain chemical, then lots of things in the industry will be changed. I will just for the very end try to show you some of the results of one of the study that we did. We wanted to see whether general population want to know more about endocrine disrupting chemicals. So we basically asked some pregnant women. We had a cohort of around 400 pregnant women. We asked them whether they have heard about the term. So 33% have never heard about the term. 40% did turn and had some idea, but only 16% of them knew exactly what it refers to. Also, the frequency of familiarity with the health risk was in a way high, so they were aware that these chemicals can be bad for our health. And the general consensus was it should be talked way more about them, but then we asked them what would be the preferred source of information, and they listed general practitioner, gynecologist, endocrinologist, pharmacist, and other health professionals, and then we asked them whether they would be able to provide such type of information. And the answers were very genuine. In more than 90%, they said that they don't feel quite educated about this particular topic, and that they do not feel comfortable to give advice about endocrine disrupting chemicals. So this is also a very important aspect of endocrine disrupting chemicals. So we need to also work more, have more research about them, have better regulation, but we also need to educate the general population more about them, because while we are waiting for better regulation, there are things that we can do to reduce our everyday exposure. And these are some of the simple lifestyle changes that we can do in our everyday life to reduce exposure. So avoid processed and canned food, consume as much fresh food as possible, and thoroughly rinse all fruits and vegetables before consumption. Also, kitchen safety is very important. Try not to use plastic as much as we usually do. So opt for a high quality stainless steel. Of course, never microwave food in plastic containers, and always replace worn non-stick cookware with healthier alternatives. These are the ways to reduce exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals in your body. And we have done the interventional study with 100 pregnant women that were attending educational workshops about these sort of simple lifestyle changes and about endocrine disrupting chemicals in general. And we managed to make a difference. So we had statistically significant reduced level in bisphenols in pregnant women that were exposed to these educational workshops when compared to control groups that didn't have any type of information. Also, there are some other tips for home and environment. So we need to well ventilate our indoor spaces, regularly vacuum and dust our home to reduce chemical residues, because our indoor air is also contains various endocrine disrupting chemicals. We should avoid carpets, furniture, or clothing which is labeled as stain resistant or waterproof, and we should avoid using air fresheners. When it comes to personal care, the general advice would be to reduce the use of cosmetics and personal care products. So simplify your routine. I know that personal care is an important part of our life, of our lives, but it is also possible to simplify routine, to minimize the use, and to use the products that do not have so many ingredients. And these are tips that are very important, especially during pregnancy and breastfeeding. As we have discussed, these are the part of life when we are especially exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals, our children. So there are some things that we can do on individual levels. So each parent, each family can have and can make some home environmental changes and some safer consumer choices. Then there is, of course, institutional level. We need to establish better environmental health literacy. We need to provide training for healthcare providers. And we need to reduce using plastic in healthcare systems as well, because hospitals are one of the most prominent polluters when it comes to plastics. And of course, policy level, this is the most important level because it brings the biggest change. So government, NGOs, industry, we need to do a lot about advocacy and the policy engagement and try to, in all these three ways, reduce exposure to chemicals which are in plastics, and these are, of course, endocrine disrupting chemicals in first place. So that would be it from my side. Thank you so much. I hope that I managed to convince you that endocrine disrupting chemicals are really special and really important. And these are the greetings from Faculty of Pharmacy, University of Belgrade and Belgrade. And I hope that some next time we will be able to see in person, whether in Mexico or in Serbia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alexandra. So we have some time for questions. So please, if anyone have a question, feel free to ask directly to Dr. Alexandra. Okay, we have a question, Doctor.
Okay, great.
Hi, Dr. Alexander.
Hello,
Alexandra. Thank you
Alexandra.
for very interesting talk. I was wondering what kind of research are you doing related to endocrine disruptor chemicals in your lab?
So I'm originally experimental toxicologist, so I'm working with the rats mainly.
Okay.
So we were testing some real-life mixtures of endocrine disruptors. We started with toxic metals and then sort of added bisphenols and phthalates and now PFAS in our research as well. So the main premise is using very low doses, the doses that are basically corresponding to the doses to which we are exposed in our daily life, to see the effects on the most important glands, like reproductive system, thyroid gland. Also, we did a lot of work in the field of metabolic disorders. And at some point, I also realized that it is very important to sort of communicate this science. So then we started to do these interventional studies as well. Some of them I mentioned. So we had some educational workshops with pregnant women, and we tried to sort of teach them how to reduce their exposure to these type of chemicals during pregnancy. And we were very proud to see the effects of these educational interventions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There is another question.
Hello, Dr. Alexandra. Thank you for your incredible talk.
Thank you so much.
You have concluded that the endocrine disruptors have to be treated as carcinogens, and I agree with that. My question is, are we prepared to regulate endocrine disruptors as carcinogens, to do the risk assessments as such?
That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this is some of the initiatives that has been in a way tried to be done in Europe and worldwide, to have something as an international association for cancer research that we have, some similar organization that would be dealing with endocrine disrupting chemicals. As you have said, it is a tremendous job, and it would be very hard to regulate them as carcinogens, especially because they are, as you have seen, everywhere. So they are very present in cosmetics products. They're very present in toys, in kitchen utilities that we are using. And such change would really change, let's say, entire world, I would dare to say, because the industries would need to change a lot. But we are indeed making small steps towards this. And I'm sure you're aware, for example, of the case of bisphenol A. We managed to do the ban on bisphenol A to reduce, to restrict it. But of course, also what we didn't predict as scientists is regrettable substitution that happened, for example, in the case of bisphenols. So now we have bisphenol S, we have bisphenol F. They are used in everyday products, and they have very similar properties like bisphenol A. So when you buy something and you see BPA free, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have bisphenols, it just doesn't have BPA. So these are the things that we also need to take care about. So this is a very, very complex question and a very complex problem. And let's hope that in the future we will be able to really solve this problem. Thank you so much for the question. That's the point. Basically, your question is the point of the entire lecture.
Thank you, doctor.
Is there another question? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Alexander. What kinds of essential oil are ED?
Sorry, I haven't heard the last word. What kind of essential oil is?
Disruptors.
So I would say that all of them contains some types of endocrine disrupting chemicals, and we need to be very aware of the fact that things that come from nature are not necessarily safe. So, for example, we have this new movement that says vegetarians, that's a very healthy way of eating, you know, and some parents will even make their children vegetarians, thinking that they are doing the right thing, you know, that they are protecting them. For example, soya-based formula. That is a very, very wrong decision, because by using soy-based formula, you're basically putting estrogens in your children's organism. So this is a very important question. And when it comes to essential oils, I'm sure you're aware of the risk of allergies as well. So these are the things that we need to take care about. So not everything natural is by default safe. We need to think about natural endocrine disruptors as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for the question.
Okay, doctor. Last question. You mentioned you have done some work with pregnant women. I would like to know if how a pregnant woman can replace the use of baby bottles, for example, plastics for glass. Have you approached something like this?
Yes. So this is a very complex question because glass bottles are a safety risk in another way. Because they can be easily broken, you know. So the plastic bottles are indeed the best solution when when you need them while feeding your baby. But there are some ways in which you can reduce the exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals and microplastics when using these type of bottles. So we also educate them about this, and I will try to just shortly say. So plastic, when it is sterilized, it is very important to wait for the plastics to be completely cold. So cold water, and everything that you are doing with your formula should be done in a glass. So you make the formula in a glass container. The plastic bottle is completely cold, and then you transferred the formula into the plastic bottle. So this is the safe way of using the plastic bottle. And that is something that we do not teach our new mothers. And it is very important because in this way, it was scientifically proven that you can reduce the level of endocrine disrupting chemical in milk, and also the level of microplastic to a very, very great extent.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, on behalf of Mexican Society of Toxicology, we want to say thank you for this very interesting presentation. Endocrine disruptors are very important players for the exposome, so we need to make more research and make some decision regulations. So thank you so much for your presentation. We will send you your certificate by email.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.